Hello world, I am Korean and live in Seoul. South Korea's President, Yoon Suk-yeol, made headlines worldwide by abruptly declaring martial law on December 3, 2024, which shocked many of my fellow citizens.
자유헌정 질서를 지키기 위해 비상계엄을 선포합니다.
No one expected this declaration while we were leading our peaceful daily lives. It initially felt like a joke. Fortunately, the 6-hour event has ended, but the repercussions are still unfolding. I will summarize the timeline of events and their implications. Please stay with us until the end and share this information widely. Most of you are probably familiar with the Republic of Korea, but I'll tell you its location for those who aren't. Korea is located between China and Japan at the tip of East Asia. North Korea is where the lights are off, and South Korea is where the lights are twinkling. Seoul is here, and the Han River flows through the middle of the city. Its area is about half that of New York City, and its population is approximately 9.4 million. I will briefly outline the main points before explaining martial law forces' invasion of the National Assembly building. This is the National Assembly that was invaded. President Yoon Suk-yeol's office is located 5.5 kilometers from the National Assembly. Previously, under former President Moon Jae-in, the president's office was at the Blue House, about 6.3 kilometers north of the current location. President Yoon Suk-yeol decided to move the office here. Directly in front of the Blue House is Gyeongbokgung Palace, the palace of the Chosun dynasty. And Gwanghwamun Square is right in front of the palace. You may have seen reports of the candlelight protests on Korean news at least once. They take place in this area. Now let's review Korea's martial law situation in a timeline from when it occurred to the present. President Yoon declares martial law for the first time in 44 years.
일거에 척결하고 자유헌정 질서를 지키기 위해 비상계엄을 선포합니다.
Around 30 minutes later, South Korea's National Assembly compound in Seoul closes its entrances. This is the National Assembly building, and there are 7 gates. This is the athletic field where the martial law helicopter landed. This is the member's office building. Just 3 minutes after President Yoon declared martial law troops attempted to enter the National Assembly building. Since the Constitution of the Republic of Korea grants the authority to lift martial law to the National Assembly, opposition leader Lee Jae-myung promptly informs members of the Democratic Party as he heads to the National Assembly. The Constitution does not allow the President to suspend the National Assembly, even during wartime. Therefore, the martial law army's entry into the National Assembly is deemed an unconstitutional act and a form of rebellion.
늦은 시간이긴 하지만 국민 여러분께서 이 나라를 지켜주셔야 합니다.
Citizens, lawmakers, and YouTubers who watched President Yoon's speech and opposition leader Lee Jae-myung's appeal to the public following the declaration of unconstitutional martial law began gathering at the National Assembly. They recognized the seriousness of the situation. At least 150 lawmakers needed to be present to lift the unconstitutional martial law. Remarkably, all 190 lawmakers convened at the National Assembly late at night and voted to repeal the martial law. When the lawmakers arrived at the National Assembly, they found that the National Assembly complex had already been illegally blocked by police. The Speaker and the leader of the opposition party climbed over the wall to gain entry, and an opposition lawmaker with a visual impairment also had to scale the wall to enter. A large number of citizens, driven by their determination, had already entered the National Assembly before the arrival of the martial law special forces. The 707th Special Missions Group, which entered the National Assembly by helicopter, attempted to enter the main National Assembly building. It must have been terrifying, but these unarmed citizens, with their bodies, resolutely blocked the entry of the martial law special forces. Democratic Party spokesperson Ahn Kyryong, a former announcer, instinctively took the courageous step of blocking the advance of martial law troops by grabbing the roots of their guns. This woman's actions, which became an international topic, were reported on CNN News, connecting the global community to this brave act. Citizens' courageous actions were not limited to inside the National Assembly building. Outside, they displayed incredible strength by blocking the advance of martial law troops and blocking an armored vehicle with their bare hands. When the citizens prevented martial law troops from entering the National Assembly building, they broke the glass windows and entered. If armed soldiers enter and destroy a constitutional institution to neutralize the constitutional function of the Republic of Korea, it is considered rebellion under the military criminal law. Since the National Assembly is a constitutional institution, this video can cause an increase in the crime of rebellion. The only punishment for the leader of the rebellion is the death penalty. Martial law troops entered to block the National Assembly's vote to suspend martial law and entered to arrest the Speaker of the National Assembly and the opposition party leader. Citizens and aides to the National Assembly members inside piled up desks and chairs to create a barricade to prevent the martial law troops from advancing. Finally, the 190 members of the National Assembly voted to lift martial law at around 1 a.m. on the 4th. 3.5 hours later, at 4:27 a.m., President Yoon accepted the National Assembly's demands and accepted the martial law lifting bill through a national address. This happened just 6 hours after martial law was declared.
수용하여 계엄을 해제할 것입니다.
The 6-hour martial law army's entry into the National Assembly was relayed live by brave YouTubers rather than regular broadcasting cameras. They followed the martial law soldiers and filmed their actions, and the entire nation watched all night long and gathered in front of the National Assembly building. The martial law force consisted of 4 teams: the entry team, the arrest team, the reserve team, and the police. The soldiers who arrived by helicopter were the 707 Special Missions Group, and their mission was to enter the National Assembly and subdue those who resisted and the National Assembly members who had been ordered to be arrested. The 707 Special Missions Group is a group of soldiers trained to suppress terrorism and assassinate North Korean figures, including Kim Jong-un. It is similar to the role of the Delta Force in the United States. The soldiers wearing black uniforms and helmets with spectacles are the 707 Special Missions Group agents. Some of them were carrying sniper rifles. Their mission seems to have been to lie down on the lawn and shoot the opposition leader, Lee Jae-myung, or the National Assembly Speaker if they ran away with their party officials. They are also trained to be deployed on the rooftop and shoot people in the vanguard to disperse citizens who flock there. The second unit to enter was the 1st Airborne Special Forces Brigade. The 1st Airborne Brigade was involved in 3 military coups: the May 16th coup, 1961, the December 12th coup, 1979, and martial law in 2024. 2 battalions and about 250 people were dispatched to Udo at the time. Of them, about 210 entered the National Assembly grounds, and about 40 entered the main building. The 707 Special Missions Group and the 1st Airborne Brigade were scheduled to enter first and subdue the people inside the National Assembly building. Then the Capitol Defense Command's Military Police Corps would arrest the members of the National Assembly and take them away. The cable handcuffs they shed were found at the scene. This unit worked in teams of 2 to arrest 1 person and planned to take the detained National Assembly member to the Capitol Security Command in Namtaeryong, southeast of Seoul. The soldiers wearing frog pattern uniforms are the military police. In addition, 2 battalions of the 9th Airborne Special Forces Brigade in Incheon were waiting outside the National Assembly building. They were intended to be deployed additionally if the 1st Airborne Special Forces Brigade and the 707 Special Missions Group failed to take control of the National Assembly. However, due to citizens' restraint, they could not succeed in their operation, and in the National Assembly, the 190 attending lawmakers unanimously passed a motion to terminate martial law. President Yoon's unconstitutional martial law ended in just 6 hours. It is reported that the total number of martial law troops deployed to the National Assembly was 685. It wasn't just the National Assembly that was involved. Yoon Suk-yeol deployed the 3rd Airborne Special Forces to the National Election Commission 50 minutes before he was appointed martial law commander. Once the martial law forces invaded the National Assembly, they may have immediately manipulated evidence of election fraud, arrested ruling party lawmakers, and attempted to secure the Election Commission's server to find a reason to dissolve the National Assembly. The purpose may be to dissolve the National Assembly and manipulate the election when the re-election of members of the National Assembly takes place. Another suspicion is that it is highly likely that the purpose is to destroy evidence regarding his alleged election interference. Since the National Election Commission is also an independent constitutional institution, any attempt to take over the National Election Commission by sending in the military to neutralize it is tantamount to treason. Under Korean law, the only punishment for treason is the death penalty. Yoon Suk-yeol and former Defense Minister Kim Yong-hyun graduated from the same high school. The commanders who attended the mutiny included a general who went to the same high school as these two, and juniors from Minister Kim Yong-hyun's military academy were also involved. These people often make very detailed preparations in advance. What has been revealed so far is that 8 units have been mobilized for the rebellion. The 1st Airborne Unit, known to have deployed about 250 people, is located near Gimpo International Airport and is only 8 kilometers from the National Assembly building. The Capital Defense Command Special Unit, Military Police, is also located approximately 10 kilometers from the National Assembly building. 3 more units are within 20 kilometers. The rebels prepared a reserve unit close to the National Assembly in case of the first failure. The key unit that entered the National Assembly building was the 707 Special Forces Unit, located approximately 54 kilometers away from the National Assembly. Korea's most elite troops were dispatched, but why could they enter the National Assembly? As explained earlier, the people's door to the National Assembly was blocked, and secondly, the dispatch of the 707 Special Forces, which was responsible for key missions, was delayed. The special commander, who had not thought about martial law, had just ordered the unit officers who were on emergency standby until 10 o'clock. However, at 10:30 p.m. he received an order from the commander to mobilize, the special commander said at a press conference. It is approximately 54 kilometers from Icheon, where the special lease is located, to the National Assembly building. However, the helicopter they will take is 35 kilometers south of Yumseong. The distance takes approximately 20 minutes. Considering that the commander had announced that a helicopter would arrive soon, he ordered the aircraft to be dispatched to the unit in Yumseong ahead of the 707 Special Delegate Order. However, the Special Operations Air Group in the Yumseong area, which has helicopters, also had its helicopter pilots leave work while on emergency standby, just like the 707 Special Leased Unit, and it took time to call back those who were leaving work and dispatch them. The 707 Special Task Force's preparations were completed, and the fastest helicopter arrived after 11:20 p.m., said Director Kim Hyun-tae. It is said that the late arrival of the aircraft was also due to the weather. The unit commander reported that 12 helicopters were dispatched, 6 at a time, at 10-minute intervals, and 96 people were sent to one sortie. It took about 30 minutes to get to the National Assembly building and 40 to 50 minutes for all unit members to arrive. The commander of the Special Operations Command added about 101 additional members to the returning helicopter, bringing the total to 197 members of the 707 Special Forces. The coup d'état plotted and orchestrated by Yoon Suk-yeol and elite leaders from the military academy, created to protect the Republic of Korea, was stopped in 6 hours by brave citizens and the swift resolution of opposition members of the National Assembly to lift martial law. Angry citizens gathered in front of the National Assembly building in Yeouido, more than 1 million people. The people called for the impeachment of Yoon Suk-yeol in an orderly manner. The National Assembly members quickly proposed a bill to impeach President Yoon Suk-yeol. On Saturday, December 7th, the impeachment bill was put to a vote, but contrary to the people's will, the ruling party's National Assembly members actively interfered and did not attend the vote, so this impeachment bill was not established. and Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment bill is defeated.
통일되지 않았음을 선포합니다.
Many disappointed citizens flocked outside the National Assembly building, and Yoon Suk-yeol shouted for him to step down. Han Dong-hoon, the representative of the ruling People Power Party, also argues that President Yoon Suk-yeol is dangerous and should be suspended from his duties immediately. However, he changed his position after meeting with the president. Some media reported that President Yoon Suk-yeol threatened his in-laws with corruption, and Han Dong-hoon appears to have succumbed to this.
국민을 지키기 위해서 윤석열 대통령의 조속한 직무 집행 정지가 필요하다고 판단합니다.
The opposition party immediately submitted a bill to impeach Yoon Suk-yeol to the National Assembly again. It once again declared that it would submit an impeachment bill weekly if the ruling People Power Party did not attend the vote on the impeachment bill and the voting requirements were not met. Opposition leader Lee Jae-myung said that Yoon Suk-yeol, the main culprit of the military mutiny, would be immediately arrested. He told Yoon Suk-yeol he should step down or be impeached.
민주당은 국민의 이름으로 반드시 윤석열을 탄핵하겠습니다.
The people were angry when the ruling party, the People Power Party, took a position that seemed to protect Yoon Suk-yeol's martial law. People take to the streets every night and hold candlelight vigils every day. In particular, many young students participated, showing that this is not just a localized issue, but a widespread movement. They should impeach Yoon Suk-yeol. They are shouting to disband the People Power Party, the coup party. Foreign media reports that young people's protests are not just a state of gloom but also a display of creativity. Young people are calling for impeachment by rewriting the popular K-pop apart lyrics into protest slogans. This innovative approach to protest is truly impressive and shows the depth of their commitment to their cause. The National Assembly immediately defined the illegal martial law as a coup d'état and asked urgent questions to the state council members and military generals who participated in the martial law.
입법권에 대해 권한이 없다 되어 있어요. 겸사령관으로서 제1호 포고령의 제1항 이것이 불법이라고 하는 걸 몰랐다는 이야기입니까? 겸상 편람 과장이 작성하는 문건입니다.
23 leading figures, including Yoon Suk-yeol, are suspected of participating in or sympathizing with the illegal martial law revealed through this inquiry. It was shown that former Minister of National Defense Kim Yong-hyun proposed the declaration of martial law. He is currently arrested and being investigated by the prosecution. There are a total of 14 military commanders participated in the rebellious martial law, including Minister of National Defense Kim Yong-hyun. In the administration, 5 individuals, including Prime Minister Han Duck-soo, are either participating in or suspected of involvement in rebellious martial law. Minister of Public Administration and Security Lee Sang-min, who is a junior from the same high school as Yoon Suk-yeol and has maintained a close relationship with him since their time working in the prosecution, is suspected of having ordered the police to block and enter the National Assembly. Both the South Korean National Police Agency and the Seoul Metropolitan Police Agency are under investigation after being found to have obstructed access to the National Assembly based on this order. Lee Sang-min, Minister of Public Administration and Security, who attended an emergency question regarding martial law at the National Assembly Public Administration and Security Committee, is strongly suspected of participating in the rebellion due to his remarks defending Yoon Suk-yeol.
내란의 동조자다, 내란의 피혐의자다라고 표현하는 부분에 대해서는 좀 더 신중을 기울였으면 합니다.
Who declared martial law in clear violation of the Constitution. He immediately resigned as Minister of Public Administration and Security, and Yoon Suk-yeol accepted his resignation. The opposition party strongly opposes the move, saying it is a measure to block Minister Lee Sang-min from appearing as a witness at the National Assembly. The opposition party has accused him of rebellion, and he has been banned from leaving the country. The opposition party of complicity in martial law also accused the Minister of Justice. Angry citizens argue that the People's Power Party, which did not participate in resolving the ban or impeachment, should be defined as an unconstitutional political party and disbanded. They are creating and distributing a song about the 105 National Assembly members of the People Power Party called 105 People Who Brought to Light in the Revolt. Considering the scale of the mobilized organization, it is difficult to believe that Yoon Suk-yeol spontaneously declared martial law. Except for the Joint Chiefs of Staff, which has military control, the Army Chief of Staff was appointed martial law commander, and all units handling information were mobilized. When moving military forces, a Special Operations Command that did not require approval from the U.S. military was mobilized. In addition, police officers with the Ministry of Public Administration and Security status were mobilized. To take control of these forces and move troops, a leader who could follow orders had to be appointed to mobilize many organizations. Preparations were likely made at least a year in advance. Former Minister of National Defense Kim Yong-hyun, the mastermind behind martial law, mobilized all military and intelligence agencies. The Capitol Security Command and a unit to investigate and detain the National Assembly members to be arrested were also mobilized. It appears that these rebel groups had the intention of sending the 707 Special Forces into the National Assembly, quickly arresting members of the National Assembly, and disbanding the opposition party by accusing them of being pro-North Korea forces. Out of the 14 commanders deployed to the rebellious martial law army, 12 were graduates of the military academy. This military school is responsible for training commanders for the Republic of Korea Army. Nearly all high-ranking officials in the Republic of Korea's military are alumni of this academy, which is essential for those aspiring to join the military elite. Their primary mission is to prevent threats from North Korea and safeguard the South Korean people. However, it is concerning that graduates of the military academy attempted to use force against members of the National Assembly, who represent the citizens of South Korea, rather than facing threats from North Korea. The leaders of the rebellious martial law were graduates of Chungam High School, the same high school as Yoon Suk-yeol, as well as graduates of the military academy. These individuals were reportedly associated with the former Minister of National Defense. The insurrectionary martial law was planned and implemented by the private organizations of Yoon Suk-yeol and Kim Yong-hyun, excluding the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who officially hold the military command authority of the Republic of Korea Armed Forces. The current commander of the Joint Chiefs of Staff is from the Navy. Hanahai, a private organization of generals who graduated from the Korean Military Academy, seized power in a coup d'état on December 12, 1979, 44 years ago. The dictator Chun Doo-hwan, who took power in this coup d'état, massacred countless citizens. The commanders who graduated from the Korea Military Academy, who should have been at the forefront of protecting the citizens, took the lead in harming the citizens. The main culprit who put the Republic of Korea in danger for the past 50 years may not have been North Korea, but elite soldiers who graduated from the Korean Military Academy. A comprehensive overhaul of the education system seems necessary for the Korea Military Academy to shed its stigma of being a school that produces traitors. The overwhelming majority of those who participated or are suspected of participating in anti-constitutional martial law are from Gyeongsang Province in Korea. Even in Chun Doo-hwan's martial law and military coup 44 years ago, the participation rate of people from the military academy and Gyeongsang Province was high. Along with the military academy, Gyeongsang-do will have difficulty ridding itself of the stigma of being the city that produced the most military commanders who jeopardized South Korea more than North Korea. This region is the core support base of the current ruling party, the People Power Party. However, due to strong resistance from the people, they were disbanded by the National Assembly. A bill of impeachment was proposed, but it was rejected due to the non-participation of the Power of People Party. When news of the corruption spread, Korea's stock market fell sharply. People gather at the National Assembly every day and call for impeachment. On December 7th, Yoon Suk-yeol announced a statement to the public and hinted at a retreat for a second term, saying he would leave his future to the party.
우리 당에 일임하겠습니다.
The Korean capital market seemed to be gradually stabilizing, but on December 12th, the day of Chun Doo-hwan's coup 44 years ago, Yoon Suk-yeol made a public statement and declared that he would not back down but fight back.
저를 탄핵하든 수사하든 저는 이에 당당히 맞설 것입니다.
However, in the process of questioning pending issues in the National Assembly, many soldiers who participated in martial law confessed their conscience. Although it was clearly revealed that martial law was illegal and unconstitutional, Yoon Suk-yeol's perception did not change at all. The South Korean military conducted K-9 self-propelled howitzer firing training near the Enlil in the West Sea last June. About 290 K-9 self-propelled multiple rocket launchers were fired into the Southwest Sea. It was the first maritime exercise in 7 years since 2017. In addition, suspicions are raised that the Minister of National Defense was considering a remote strike if North Korea's sewage balloon was released a few days before the declaration of command. In addition, suspicions were raised that a drone was sent to North Korea under the leadership of former Defense Minister Kim Yong-hyun. The National Assembly claimed that this series of activities was an attempt to provoke North Korea into provocations and used this as an excuse to declare martial law and accuse opposition lawmakers of being pro-North Korea leftists. Coincidentally, when the unconstitutional martial law failed, the drone warehouse of the unit suspected of flying the drone caught fire. Opposition lawmakers suspect that evidence was destroyed.
증거를 인멸하고 있습니다. 거기 불이 났잖아요.
불이 난 건 맞습니다.
A YouTuber, who is also on the martial law army's arrest list, attended a question at the National Assembly. He made a startling claim that a highly trained assassination unit had attempted to assassinate ruling party leader Han Dong-hoon. His past closeness to Yoon Suk-yeol turned into animosity towards Yoon Suk-yeol's wife, Kim Ki-eun-hee.
제가 처음 받은 제보는 체포조가 온다가 아니라 암살조가 가동된다였습니다. 체포되어 이송되는 한동훈을 사살한다.
According to him, he claimed that the North Korean military had planned to appear as if they were rescuing opposition leaders who were being arrested by martial law forces.
이 조국, 양정철, 김어준 체포되어 호송되는 부대를 습격하여 구출하는 신용을 하다 도주한다. 3. 특정 장소에 북한 군복을 매립한다. 4. 일정 시점 후에 군복을 발견하고 북한의 소행으로 발표한다. 북한이 종북 세력을 구출하는 시도를 하였다고 발표한다.
He also revealed that martial law forces had established an operation to pretend that North Korean troops had killed several American soldiers.
그 외에 더 있습니다. 미군 연명을 사살하여 미국으로 하여금 북한 폭격을 유도한다.
He also revealed that they tried to make it look like they were attacking a North Korean-made drone by loading it with North Korean weapons.
북한산 무인기에 북한산 무기를 탑재하여 사용한다.
He said he received this information from the Allied embassy in Korea, emphasizing the reliability of the information source. In fact, on the day of martial law, it was confirmed during an inquiry into pending issues at the National Assembly that about 30 Special Assassination Special Forces known as South Korea's Secret North Korean Agents, or HID, were on standby and that 7 HID agents infiltrated the National Election Commission. The opposition party believes that Yoon Suk-yeol caused North Korea's provocation or made up an incident that appeared to be an act committed by North Korea. In other words, the opposition party suspects that President Yoon has made an elaborate plan to declare emergency martial law and suppress the opposition party under the pretext of North Korea's provocation. It is expected that an investigation into this will be conducted in the future. Still, if so, the President of the Republic of Korea and elite military personnel took a risky gamble by risking the safety of the people. It was not North Korea's Kim Jong-un that jeopardized South Korea, but the President and political generals. On December 12th, The day Yoon Suk-yeol declared that he would fight his impeachment, U.S. Representative Brad Sherman, who criticized Yoon Suk-yeol, calling South Korea's declaration of martial law an insult to Korean democracy and an affront to efforts for democracy and the rule of law around the world. A Korean radio station interviewed him. He said in the interview that the United States does not want its troops to die in a war that broke out as a cover-up operation in the absence of North Korea's provocation. Brad Sherman said that the United States also has its intelligence collection capabilities and that even if an incident occurred because the South Korean military attacked a location in South Korea, the United States would have known that it was not an attack by North Korea. Also, by making this public, it would have informed the people of South Korea and the United States that North Korea did not carry out such an attack at the time. In this interview, U.S. Congressman Brad Sherman suggested the possibility of a camouflage operation by the Korean military. On the day of Yoon Suk-yeol's declaration of martial law, the U.S. ambassador to Korea called the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Korea, but the Minister of Foreign Affairs avoided the call. The National Security Agency also did not return calls from the U.S. State Department. They should have answered the phone to avoid warnings from the United States and prevent the declaration of martial law. The fact that he avoided the phone call was confirmed as fact in an urgent question regarding insurrection at the National Assembly of the Republic of Korea.
대통령의 고유 권한이 외교권이 공백이 생겼어요. 계엄선포 당시 골드버그 주한 미대사 전화 안 받으셨죠?
그런 상황에서 제가 소통을 하는 것은 상대방을 오도할 수 있다고 생각해서 미뤘습니다.
Opposition lawmakers warned of the possibility of a second martial law, and the United States also seemed concerned about this. It was confirmed that the U.S.-2's high-altitude reconnaissance aircraft deployed to the U.S. Forces Korea on December 8th and 9th flew through Daejeon, Daegu, and Busan to the Strait of Korea and performed a reconnaissance mission. It is very unusual to fly and reconnoiter the south of the Korean peninsula rather than the north, and it appears that they were observing the movements of the Korean military. It is reported that the U.S. Forces Korea has doubled the number of U-2's high-altitude reconnaissance aircraft from the usual number of reconnaissance operations. Considering the circumstances so far, Yoon Suk-yeol, former Minister of National Defense, and rebel forces have been planning a disguised invasion of North Korea for a long time and have been trying to declare martial law. The purpose seems to have been to arrest the opposition party members who hold the majority of seats by accusing them of being pro-North Korea leftists, and to hold re-elections, thereby dreaming of taking power permanently. Myung Tae-kyun, who assisted President Yoon during his election before the martial law declaration, was arrested for manipulating public opinion. Suspicion was raised that Myung Tae-kyun's messenger exchange with him and his wife contained fatal evidence against the two, hastening the declaration of unconstitutional martial law. December 12th is the day Yoon Suk-yeol broke his promise to leave his actions to the party and announced that he had done nothing wrong. Coincidentally, on the same day 44 years ago, elite soldiers from the Army Academy launched the same revolt. There is a movie made with this rebellion as a motif. It's 12 to 12, the day. It describes the situation at the time well. Suk-yeol Yoon created the subject matter for 12 to 12, the day too. Now, we can look forward to the sequel. The Nobel Prize ceremony took place in Stockholm, Sweden, on December 11th, just one day before Suk-yeol Yoon reversed his promise and announced that he would not yield to pressure. Korean writer Han Kang was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature.
On behalf of the Swedish Academy, it is my privilege to convey to you our warmest congratulations on the Nobel Prize in Literature 2024. May I now please ask you to step forward and receive your prize from His Majesty the King.
Her full-length novel, Human Acts addresses the May 18th Gwangju uprising and the suffering of its victims at the hands of military rebels 44 years ago. A similar tragic situation nearly occurred again in 2024. The Nobel Academy noted, "We confront cruel reality directly, and through this, we explore the genre of testimonial literature." They also remarked, "Witnessing the unidentified dead and bodies that cannot be buried evokes the fundamental theme of Antigone."
오직 인간에 대한 근원적인 의문으로 내 안에 새겨졌습니다. 인간은 인간에게 이런 행동을 하는가? 나는 생각했습니다. 동시에 다른 의문도 있었습니다. 같은 책에 실려 있는 총상자들에게 피를 나눠주기 위해 대학병원 앞에서 끝없이 줄을 서 있는 사람들의 사진이었습니다. 인간은 인간에게 이런 행동을 하는가? 양립할 수 없어 보이는 두 질문이 충돌해 풀 수 없는 수수께끼가 되었습니다.
The applause she received in Stockholm resonated with the crowd gathered outside the National Assembly building in Udo on December 12th. Thanks to the collective power of citizens present, the National Assembly impeached Yoon Suk-yeol for a second time.
가결되었음을 선포합니다.
The rebel group is being investigated simultaneously by the prosecution, the police, and the Corruption Investigation Office for high-ranking officials. In addition, the National Assembly passed the Permanent Special Prosecutor Act for Yoon Suk-yeol's wife, Kim Ji-hee, and the Permanent Special Prosecutor Act for Yoon Suk-yeol's rebellion. Additionally, a government investigation was also approved at the National Assembly level. So far, the prosecution has been investigating and exonerating Kim Ji-hee's family for their crimes. The opposition party, which does not trust the prosecution organization, plans to use the General Special Prosecution Law, which allows for a more extended investigation with more investigative personnel. Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment has now been transferred to the Constitutional Court, and Yoon Suk-yeol's fate lies in the hands of the Constitutional Court judges. Since clear evidence of the rebellion was revealed through live broadcasts by brave YouTubers, there would be no disagreement among them. Please watch until the end to see how the people protect Korea's democracy.